Little Red Riding Hood. In a small village near a wide green forest lived a little girl everyone called Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was not a loud child. She liked to walk, to look around, and to notice things. She noticed how the wind moved the leaves, how birds stopped singing when someone passed, and how the forest changed its sounds depending on the time of day. One morning, her mother called her into the kitchen. Little Red Riding Hood, she said calmly, your grandmother isn't feeling well today. I think she has caught a cold. The girl stopped and looked up. Her eyes filled with worry. Is she very sick, Mom? She asked. No, her mother answered, but she is weak. I want you to take her a basket of food. There's bread, some sweets, and a little jar of honey. Little Red Riding Hood nodded immediately. I'll go right away, she said. I'll walk quickly. Her mother gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Listen carefully, she said more quietly. You must walk along the path. Do not leave it, and do not talk to strangers in the forest. Little Red Riding Hood smiled. I know, Mom. I promise. Her mother looked at her closely. Do you really promise? I really promise, the girl said and took the basket. When she stepped outside, the air was fresh and cool. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft colors. The forest stood quiet and calm, as if it were still waking up. The path was clear and familiar. Little Red Riding Hood walked with a light step, humming softly. I'll get there quickly, she said out loud. Grandma will be happy. But the forest listened. And somewhere among the trees, unseen eyes had noticed her too. She walked along the path, looking from side to side. Sunbeams slipped between the branches and fell onto the ground like small golden leaves. Birds sang above her, and the air smelled of young, fresh grass. How beautiful it is today, she said with a smile. Just then, a soft rustling came from the bushes beside the path. Little Red Riding Hood stopped. Her heart jumped, but she tried not to be afraid. Who's there? She asked. From the shadows stepped a wolf. He walked slowly and calmly as if he had all the time in the world. His eyes were sharp, but his smile looked almost polite. Good day, little girl, he said gently. Where are you going so early? Little Red Riding Hood hesitated. She remembered her mother's words, but the wolf did not look frightening. He spoke kindly and even bowed a little. I'm going to my grandmother's house, she answered. She lives at the edge of the forest. To your grandmother? The wolf repeated, smiling wider. How thoughtful of you. And what are you carrying in your basket? Bread, sweets, and honey, said Little Red Riding Hood. Grandma isn't feeling well. The wolf nodded slowly, pretending great concern. Poor grandmother, he sighed. She must be very happy to see you. Yes, the girl smiled. She always is. The wolf looked at the path, then at the forest around them. He seemed to be thinking carefully. And why are you walking alone on this narrow path? He asked. Little Red Riding Hood looked around. The flowers really were beautiful, red, yellow, and blue, shining in the morning light. Do you think so? She asked. She likes flowers. Of course, the wolf said confidently. I would like them too. Little Red Riding Hood lowered her voice. But my mother said I shouldn't leave the path. The wolf leaned closer and spoke softly. Just for a little while, the forest is calm today. Nothing bad will happen. Little Red Riding Hood thought for a moment. Then she nodded. All right, she said. Just for a little while, I'll pick a beautiful bouquet and then I'll go. Wonderful, the wolf smiled. Goodbye, said Little Red Riding Hood as she bent down toward the flowers. The wolf turned and hurried away without looking back. His smile was no longer polite, and his eyes gleamed with impatience. I'll get there first, he muttered, and I'll wait. Behind him, Little Red Riding Hood carefully chose the prettiest flowers, humming softly and thinking only of her grandmother. The forest remained quiet, but it was no longer empty. While Little Red Riding Hood was still in the forest, carefully picking flowers, the wolf moved quickly between the trees. Soon, a small cottage appeared among the trees. It stood quietly, with a thin line of smoke rising from the chimney. The wolf stopped in front of the door and listened. Inside, everything was calm. He knocked gently. Who is it? Came a weak voice. The wolf made his voice thin and soft. It's Little Red Riding Hood, he said. I brought you food, Grandma. There was a short pause. "Come in, my child," the voice answered. "The door is open. I am too weak to get up." The wolf opened the door and stepped inside. The grandmother lay in her bed, covered up to her chin. When she saw the wolf, her eyes widened. "You are not my granddaughter," she cried. But the wolf did not let her say more. Soon the cottage was silent again. The wolf put on the grandmother's nightgown and placed her cap on his head. He lay down in the bed and pulled the blanket up, trying to look as ordinary as possible. "I must wait," he whispered. "She'll be here soon." Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood was still in the forest. Her basket was now full of flowers, bright, fresh, and carefully chosen. She smiled with satisfaction. "Grandma will be happy," she said. "Just a little more, and I'll go." When she finally returned to the path, the sun was already higher in the sky. The forest felt quieter now. The birds sang less, and the shadows between the trees were longer. She walked quickly, holding her basket carefully. Soon she saw her grandmother's cottage ahead, just as she remembered it. She stopped at the door and knocked. "Grandma, it's me," she called. "I brought you food." A familiar voice answered, but something about it sounded strange. "Come in, my child. The door is open." Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and stepped inside. The room was darker than usual. The curtains were drawn, and the air felt warm and heavy. "Grandma," she said softly, "I brought you bread, sweets, and honey. How are you feeling?" "Come closer, my child," the voice replied. "I am very weak." Little Red Riding Hood walked toward the bed. As she came closer, she began to notice things that felt different. "Grandma," she said slowly, "why are your ears so big?" "So I can hear you better, my child," answered the wolf. "And why are your eyes so big?" "So I can see you better." Little Red Riding Hood stepped closer. "And why are your hands so big?" "So I can hug you better." She leaned forward, her voice now barely a whisper. "Grandma, why is your mouth so big?" The wolf jumped up from the bed. "So I can eat you better." He lunged forward. Little Red Riding Hood screamed and stepped back. Her basket fell to the floor, and the flowers scattered everywhere. She ran toward the door, but the wolf was faster. At that moment, a loud sound came from outside. A hunter was passing by and heard the scream. He noticed the open door and the strange silence inside. "This isn't right," he said. He rushed inside. Seeing the wolf, the hunter acted quickly. With strong movements, he chased the wolf out of the cottage and into the forest. The wolf ran away, disappearing between the trees. The cottage became quiet again, this time safely so. Little Red Riding Hood stood trembling. "Are you all right?" the hunter asked gently. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "I think so." From the bed came a weak voice. "I'm here too," said the grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood ran to her and hugged her carefully. "I was so scared," she whispered. "It's all right now," the hunter said. "You are safe." Little Red Riding Hood helped her grandmother sit up and gave her the food from the basket. "I promise," she said softly, "I will never leave the path again." Her grandmother smiled. "The most important thing," she said, "is that you are here." The hunter nodded. "Listening and thinking can save you," he said. "Remember that?" Little Red Riding Hood nodded. She looked at the scattered flowers on the floor and picked one up. "This one is for you, Grandma," she said. Her grandmother smiled again. Outside, the forest was quiet, but Little Red Riding Hood knew it was not the same forest anymore, and she was not the same child. Little Red Riding Hood stayed in her grandmother's cottage for a while after everything was over. "The forest is quiet again," he said, "but it's always good to be careful." When he left, the cottage felt warm and safe. The fire crackled softly, and the light from the window filled the room. Little Red Riding Hood sat beside her grandmother's bed. "I'm sorry I didn't listen," she said quietly. Her grandmother reached for her hand. "You did listen in the end," she said gently, "and you thought. That matters." Little Red Riding Hood looked down at her red hood. It rested on her shoulders, just like always, but now it felt a little different, like it was reminding her of something important. They talked for a while, not about the wolf, not about fear, but about small things, about the bread and the honey, about the flowers from the forest, about how quiet the cottage felt in the afternoon. When it was time to leave, Little Red Riding Hood packed her basket again. This time it was lighter, no flowers, just what her grandmother needed. Her grandmother walked her to the door. "Stay on the path," she said with a smile. "I will," Little Red Riding Hood answered. "I promise." She stepped outside. The forest looked the same as before. The trees were tall, the leaves moved softly in the wind, and the sunlight slipped between the branches. But Little Red Riding Hood felt different. She stood for a moment at the start of the path. "I won't hurry," she said to herself. "I'll watch, I'll listen." She began walking. Each step felt steady. She noticed how the forest sounded, the birds, the wind, her own footsteps. She did not hum this time. She did not speak out loud. She was paying attention. Once she heard a rustle in the bushes. She stopped. She waited. Nothing came out. She continued. When she reached the edge of the forest, she felt relieved, but also proud. She had walked the whole way without leaving the path. At home, her mother was waiting. "You're back," she said. "Yes," Little Red Riding Hood answered, "and Grandma is better." Her mother hugged her. "You look different," she said. Little Red Riding Hood smiled. "I feel different." That evening, she sat by the window and looked toward the forest. It was quiet now, resting in the evening light. "I know you're there," she thought, "but I know myself too." The days went on. Little Red Riding Hood still visited her grandmother. She still wore her red hood. She still liked flowers and sunny paths. But now, when she walked, she remembered to think before choosing. She remembered that kind voices are not always safe voices, and she remembered that promises matter. One afternoon, as she walked with her mother near the edge of the forest, her mother asked, "Do you still like the forest?" Little Red Riding Hood nodded. "Yes," she said, "it's beautiful, but I know how to walk in it now." Her mother smiled. That night, Little Red Riding Hood lay in her bed listening to the sounds outside. The wind moved gently, and somewhere far away an owl called. She pulled her red hood closer and closed her eyes. The forest was still there, and so the story did not end with fear. It ended with something better, with listening. And the day continued, quietly and peacefully.